Hello, and welcome to another session of the Change Exchange, where we talk about change. We talk about change moments. We talk about decisions that you made, decisions that life made for you, how you dealt with it, how you settled into a new way, a new road. And it's always fascinating. And today, my guest is Loyiso Bala. Sorry, Loyiso. Um,
Over.
Let me say that again. Today, my guest is Loyiso Bala, singer, TV host, producer, father. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I loved getting to know you and your music a little bit when I was preparing. So welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Rita. Good to finally meet you. I've been looking forward to this, but somehow, because of obviously just a lot of things all happening at once, it's actually crazy because some of us are kind of much busier during COVID, not making as much money as we used to, but we're much busier. So I think even now you're actually finding me in Cape Town, about to fly out back home to Johannesburg to my wife and my kids. Yeah.
So your story starts really, I want to say, with your brother Zwei, who was the first black boy ever at the Drakensberg Boys Choir. How did that happen?
It's a very fascinating story. When we were young, we lost our fathers, Zwai and myself. I have a sister as well who's older. Obviously, years later, when my mom remarried, we've got a younger brother who's Phelo. That's why the three of us make up the Bala Brothers. But yeah, so when we were very young, we were looked after by my cousin, Luando Bandom. Luando was 19 years old at the time. He was a petrol attendant, and in 1987, he actually won an award as the best petrol attendant in the country. Because of that award, he was then able to walk into his boss's office. You can imagine this is right slap bang, in 1987 in the apartheid times, but he really gained favor with his bosses. And through that, he was able to convince them to get us scholarships to the Drakensberg Boys Choir. So that's how we got there, not so much because of our singing, but because somebody else believed in our singing and then used their service in order to get us in there.
But it's quite a big jump to the Drakensberg Boys Choir. I mean, why that?
He actually came across a an advert, for a competition. I mean, Drakensberg has always been very, very well known, especially this the 80s and obviously the 90s. It's still a very well known school now. So he came across some competition, and they were looking for boys to enter there. So I went. It's actually a very funny story. You should have a chat with him sometime. So he put his entry in with his because back then, you had a cassette you had to give in, and so he was accepted to come and compete. Went to Johannesburg with the help of Mr. Miller, who was the headmaster at the school where we were going in Port Elizabeth, although we're from Utenay. And when he got there, they were all surprised that he was actually black. So we used to call him. This is something like so. A joke that kind of happened after that was that he was young, gifted, but black, not young, gifted, and black. But they had to, the boy had come that far. He had to enter the competition, and he actually won. But in order to win, you were going to pay. You then needed to pay your way through. So you win a place in the school through this competition, and so that's when Luanda then went to his bosses, as I said earlier on, to get us those scholarships. And so I think, in my life, as much as obviously there was Luanda open up these opportunities, but Zwai really paved the way for me to first of all get into the Drakensberg, which was my education of music, and then number two, to get into the industry as well through TKZ.
Mm. What was it like at that time? So you must have got to the school, what, in about 80? No,
Yeah,
90.
1990. Yeah. So I got to the school in 90s. So I had been there 2 years. For 2 years, he started off in 88, and then 2 years later I got in. I've got to tell you, it was absolutely tough. Just to kind of get into that. I mean, it was a weird culture for me, something I'd never known before. And obviously, we came from an education system that was way different, far less advanced. Back in the 80s, there was all black people had the Bantu education, and then everyone else had this like better education. So so as much as it was great that I was at the school where music was obviously the center and the pinnacle of everything else, I struggled in every other way, and more socially than anything. And the one point they actually didn't know whether I was going to make it into the school, and they said to me, "Why are your parents?" And I was like, I don't really have parents that you can call right now. And so Luando actually came all the way from Port Elizabeth, took to transport and taxes, whatever it took, and he came to the school and he spoke to me and said, "Buti, you know what? You just have to be strong. You just have to be strong. There's no other way." And I knew that I didn't want to go back to the dusty streets of Etenaga, and that I'd have to do something. And so through Luando's words and through Zwai's support, I mean, Zwai was tough love. I mean, he was trying to fend his own battles. I had to just be strong and just say, you know what? I believe God has brought me to this place, and if He's brought me here, He's got to make sure that He's got to take care of me. And so it was amazing, because I remember Luando shedding a tear 6 years later when I was about to graduate, because I literally started off at the bottom of the class, and now suddenly during prize giving, where the previous year I'd been chosen as the head of music, I was like getting nearly every second award that was going out. So I thank God so much for. Obviously it was hard work, and I did play a part in that, but really for just putting people in my path who were able to support me, and they were able to see me for the person that I didn't see in myself. And that speaks to today, the fact that the more we tell people of their true identity, that the reason that they are in this world is because of a specific purpose, the more they're going to believe in themselves and actually reach that purpose.
And talking about change, I mean, that changed your life beyond comprehension almost.
Oh, absolutely. The lessons that I learned at the Drakensberg, some of the people I met there, for instance, Bunny Ashley Botha, who was our choir conductor. I used to be like, man, this guy is hard, man. This guy can be horrible sometimes. But even in my adult life, even just as a father, I find myself just becoming like him just so much more, because I've come to understand that the person that I am today and the achievements that I am, my way of thinking, was because of the fatherly guidance. I don't say fatherly love, but the fatherly guidance that I got from people who stepped in because I didn't have a father. I mean, for instance, I traveled to over 16 countries overseas. Where would let's just say a black boy or any boy, for the like in that case in the early 90s, be able to travel to so many countries? I got to live with all sorts of families, being on tour the whole time. I got to learn the culture of South Africa without quite knowing the apartheid background. So I got to know people for who they were. Like I knew, okay, cool, this is a Dani. This is how you speak to Dani if you want to get some rusks. Do you know what I mean? So I got to really understand. And I guess because I got to understand people, it took the fear of the unknown away from me. So, those are life lessons that I kind of take through to, I guess like up until this day.
The Drakensberg School only, you have to leave there by the end of what was then standard 7, not so? Grade 9.
Yes, yeah, which is
and
grade
then
9.
Where did you finish your schooling?
So it's at the end of grade 9, I had a few choices of schools to go. Who are all willing to offer me to offer me scholarships. It was, and I'm gonna say it. Sorry if anyone's watching and they're from those schools, but I could have either gone to the National School of Arts, to St. Stithians College, and or I think I could have even gone to like Pro Arte, and even gone to Bunny tried to get me to go to St. Andrews in Bloemfontein because that's where he went, and I guess I could have had a choice of going to any school that I wanted, like with a full scholarship. Apart from the fact that Zwai went to St. Stithians College, I chose St. Stithians because, I'd been in an art school all my life. And the reason I'm saying all my life is not because I was at Drakensberg for my entire primary, but because when I started thinking for myself, when my eyes started opening up, that's the only reference of a school that I actually really had. So I didn't want to end up as a total arty-farty. Excuse me, that's the only word I can think of right now. And being this weird guy who's just admired by artists, And so I thought, you know what, first of all, before I'm a singer, before I'm even a performer, I'm a songwriter, and I want to write songs that connect to people's situations. And so I felt that if I just went to, and it's not a normal school, it's very expensive, but let's just call it normal, because it's not necessarily an art school. But that, like, if I go and I go to school and I begin to chill with like with the normal person, as we call them, out there, and have the experiences that the songs that I write will be able to connect to them and be relevant to their situations as well. So that was the reason why I did that. But I went into St. Stithians and I was like, yo, there's obviously still academics on top of that. But we did it, 3 years of that. It was absolutely great. Loved it. And then the school actually not kept me back for another year, but they asked if I could just stay for another year, just so that I could, do some ad hoc teaching there and there. And at that time, they were taking care of my Bachelor of Music through UNISA, which I didn't finish because then the industry bug hit me, bit me really, really strong.
So how did that happen? Did you start with TKZ then?
Yeah, so while I was at St. Stithians, right, there was TKZ became a very big group. First of all, my brother got a scholarship to go to the Royal School of Music in Scotland, one of the most revered schools. And then 3 months later, he came back. We asked him, why aren't you going back? He said, nah, man. I mean, he used to say that, no, it's too cold. I'm like, come on, like, what are you going to do here? And then he said, no, I'm going to meet up with 2 of my guys, and we're going to try and do something within Kwaito. I'm like, okay, you studied classical and now you're going to do Kwaito, So they tried to do that thing. The first thing that they tried to do, it was an absolute flop. But then suddenly with the second single, which they did, I mean, this thing just blew up like you just won't believe. I got the opportunity to chill with TKZ, and all that time, I was saying to myself, no, I'm not going to the music industry because I want to be like my old choir master. I want to go teach. I want to do choral music. But at the same time, I was actually still writing. I mean, I started writing some R&B songs because I was a boy who was falling in love. And as a songwriter, you write about your emotions. So that's what I did. And so Zwai said to me the one time, he said, listen, we're doing this concept album called TKZ Family. Why don't you come and come sing some of your songs, and then we'll do like maybe 2 or 3 songs where all of us are together. So this is TKZ and some family members and some friends, but we're going to call it TKZ Family. So we did that, and so it was time to promote it, and this was going to be one of TKZ's concerts, which they had at the stadium. And I remember going up there, and my part was about to come up. The song had just come out that week, so people knew what the song was, but obviously I didn't quite know because there was no social media, for people to say you're great and you're absolutely lovely. I went onto the stage and I thought, I'm the only person who's actually going to sing here apart from Zwai, who they know, and all these guys are rappers. So I sat there expecting bottles and all sorts to be thrown at me because, this was a hood crowd, you know what I mean? And as I sang the first line of the song, which was stop, literally the whole place just erupted. Let me be your number one. And I just sat there going, they singing my song. This is like what, like 25,000 people singing my song. And here I am, I want to teach 12 boys in a class. And so that's when it hit. I was like, yeah, okay, cool, that's fine. I think I can like this. Let's try an album. And yeah,
that must be one of the greatest highs, huh? To have an audience, and your audience is absolutely with you.
You know what I mean? It's like getting your exam results, thinking that you failed, but actually looking at it and you got 98%.
Sure.
That's the kind of a feeling. I mean, that was the kind of a feeling for me. So I was like, wow, man, I mean, I can do this thing. This is really awesome. Definitely.
So then did you just stop studying and go into this full time?
Yeah, well, I mean, because the thing is, obviously with the studies, it was always working towards something, but I thought, okay, cool, maybe that's not the direction I want to go into. I could literally start my career right now. But to let you know, after TKZ, so what I did was through, my manager at the time, Sipo Dlamini, he said, look, I've got some friends in the UK. They've just, established this artist called Craig David. And I think, before we do your first album, why don't we just go over there and chill for a few weeks? You work with these guys, you understand the sound and the feel of what R&B is. And so I went there, just sat with these guys in studios, because at that time there was no real R&B in South Africa, you know. And so I really just kind of got my learnings into that. So before I even got into studio to understand the genre, and so we released that album, and that album sold really, really well.
Loyiso,
And
but
then I
just
did many albums
I
after
need
that.
to ask about this. You were what, 22, 3, a
Yeah,
young
about
black man
20,
from South
21 to
Africa,
22.
and suddenly you're sitting here in London with people from a completely different background. From how did you experience that? How did you? Was it the school, the Drakensberg School, that gave you
Yeah.
that I can do this?
No, absolutely, absolutely. But I mean, I must say, I've had to grow in confidence over the years. So at the Drakensberg, I had no confidence going in. And I didn't believe people when they used to say, wow, you sing so great, because they were always just greater singers than me. But, you know, music has a funny way of, of connecting people. So if I meet a musician anywhere, for me, it's like I'm just meeting a brother who went to school with me, because in languages, you get different types of languages, but in music, there's only one language. Do you know what I mean? So I guess the Drakensberg, in a way, it prepared me for that, to be able to study people and to connect people socially. But then also, if it was a musician, there were certain terms that we use. Do you know what I mean? That are universal.
It is like sharing a language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So music itself is like a language on its own. So it was absolutely awesome, you know, just kind of sitting with those guys. But I've always tried my absolute best to never let this go to my head, because things go to your head during the process. But to always say the result still has to happen, and the result is going to speak for itself.
Yeah. You've performed in Hyde Park in 2008 with 46664, and in Madison Square Gardens and Radio City. How does one keep your feet on the ground?
You, you know, one person once said that, you know, you're as good as your last performance. Your next one is never guaranteed that it's going to be as good as the last one. I guess, you know, it being the Olympics this year, I can use this analogy. Just because you won the last Olympics, you're going to have to work just as hard to win again. As a matter of fact, it's probably harder to win again than it is to win the first time, because there's no that drive of people going, you can do this. You know, sometimes the fact that you've never gotten there is not as easy. So, you know what, I'm always aware of that. But I think more than that, I'm also aware of the fact that that I'm in charge of the input, but God is in control of the outcome. So in other words, how people feel, I don't take any how do I say it?
Credit, or
there's a word for it.
You don't take it for yourself.
Yes,
I
don't take it. I don't take it for myself. And the thing is, as long as I know that I did my bit, how people react should not determine whether I did it well or not. Do you know what I mean? So I guess, you know, like, that's what it is. And maybe it's because I'm just not a billionaire yet. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying it's never going to change. I'm working towards something, and I'm very much aware that, you know, then I'm going to have to do it again next week, and I'm going to have to do it again next week. So I'll celebrate, but the celebration is part of a journey that nothing is ever.
Pavarotti said apparently that the worst thing that can happen is an audience who've all heard his latest CD.
That's so true. Do you know? And I can imagine why. I can imagine why, because if you get your lyrics wrong, you know, they'll know whether you performed according to it. You know.
You sing R&B, you sing classical, you sing gospel. Do you have a favorite?
People, when I started off in the industry, people try to box me. Do you know what I mean? And I couldn't box myself, because for me, you know, so someone would ask me, what's your favorite type of music? And you know what my answer would be? Good music. In other words, you can get bad R&B and you can get good R&B. You can get bad classical and you can get good classical. So to me, you know, just because you sing R&B, don't think that I'm going to like your music. It has to be good. In other words, like, it has to be of a certain standard. You know, it has to have a certain how can I say it? Like, you know, it's going to be palpable in some way. Just because you got the stars and the moons, it doesn't mean that, you know, it's going to be cool. And that's because when I was at the Drakensberg, we sang everything. I mean, like, we sang everything from Ladysmith Black Mambazo to the Beatles. You know, if you ask me what my favorite composers are, I'll tell you, number one, it's Bach. Number two, it's Freddie Mercury. Number three, it's you see what I mean? I mean, I had to go from jazz Bach to Freddie Mercury, but that's because I see them all as musicians, and so yeah. So for me, like when it comes
and
to
it's
category,
about. I'm so sorry. I have a terrible cold, so please excuse me, the audience as well.
It's all good.
You worked with, and then you were the channel manager at Trinity Broadcasting Network's Africa channel. How did you experience that, being a manager now, being in the office?
I think, business is always something that crept in me. And I guess in 2014, I really kind of felt, because now I was a board member at Samro, also at Sampra as well, which is the performance rights. And I sat in a few committees, not only there, but also like in other, like in other companies, the Gumas, for instance, at that time. And I just, I'm someone who believes in preparation, not necessarily for others, because some people somehow they just born know it. I don't think I'm that guy. Okay. So for me to do really well, I always prepare. And a lot of the times people don't see the preparation. They just kind of see, once again, just the outcome. For instance, it was 12 years of studying music, as much as I was musical, before I even released my first album. And then I took time, like I said earlier on, before I got into R&B. When Bala Brothers was about to release the classical album, as much as we studied classical, we did workshops with a guy who came all the way from Italy to give us voice lessons. When I was about to get into gospel, people do not know this, but I went to Bible school for a year, because I believe that in preparation, yes, you'll always get it right because you're talented, but the longevity depends on how well prepared you are, and the impact is going to depend on that. So what I did was,
you kind of depth. It gives you depth that you wouldn't have otherwise.
No, absolutely. They always say that. I mean, I always tell people this. They're like, "But why do you study if you're that good?" I said, "No, because when I hit a wall, at least I've got a bag of tricks that I can just pull up, so that I can carry on. Because I'm not always inspired to do what I do. You know what I mean? So I can't just work off inspiration. I need some tools and certain things after a while when inspiration is gone for that little while.
So that's obviously also your advice to young people trying to get into or wanting to get into the industry.
No, absolutely. Listen, if you're inspired, you'll definitely get there. But it's so important that you study your craft. That actually also kind of shows an interest. I'm not saying you should go to a formal institution, which is what I did. Even before getting into business, getting my postgrad diploma in management, just having finished my MBA last year, and obviously now with the whole sort of COVID and the digital, I took some time to do a program at Gibbs, a digital transformation program. I'm not saying you should do that. Obviously, I've been able to, you know what I mean? But you should always, but I know guys, for instance, who are the best creative directors. And where they learn this stuff? Through Google. They Googled everything and they spend their time just learning the craft. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but even YouTube is good, but keep away from Wikipedia. Okay. No, I didn't say that, but yeah. So like I said to you, I just felt the sort of urge and saw that, look, I was getting into business now. And so I did the postgrad diploma in management through Henley Business School, where I'm actually programmed, like a program director, one of the program directors now. And also then did my MBA. And it is during that time of preparation that the opportunity came. Do you know what I mean? They say it takes preparation, and they say opportunity, right? But I think also positioning. So I think I was positioned for that, for obviously, for it to open up that opportunity. And so I served as channel director for TBN for 2.5 years. And yeah.
COVID hit you and Jennifer, your wife. She's written about it, I think. It did you hard professionally. How did you work with it? How did you cope?
Let me tell you once again, when we're not able, God always brings people through to help us through. It hit us hard because as much as I was employed at TBN at the time, I still was able to supplement my income with performances and stuff like that. So we had to make some adjustments, which I believe that a lot of people have had to make in their lives, you know, like move from our very big house that we had into a slightly smaller place. We've got 2 children and so on and so forth. And then at least, you know, make sure that we're pivoting. I know that's a word that's overused, but that, you know, we pivot our careers from being physical to online. So I guess it really came at a time when none of us were ready or ever thought that it would come to it. And obviously, you know, we speak about it so that because, you know, if you look at Instagram, we've got this perfect picture of a family. We're always smiling. People will be like, these guys never have any hard times. And I guess for us sharing it is just a way to show others as well that, listen, the troubles that you are going through, we are also going through. And we had to make those changes so that by the time that we're at this point in this COVID season, that we wouldn't be far worse off than when we were in the beginning. And I must say, you know, God has been so good. I look back now and I say, you know, because of the decisions that we made back then, and because we prayed about it and we worked towards it, yeah, I mean, like we're at an okay place. I mean, you know, I've got some friends out there who've had to change careers. You know, guys have had to go from being singers to teachers. You know, not even music teachers, but like to all sorts of other types of teachers, geography and so on. And my heart is with those who are solely focusing on the music. Do you know what I mean? Because I know just how hard it is, and I don't have an answer. But just to say, keep believing, and we're working through this together.
What's the secret of being able to accept change, to adapt, to pivot, to find a new way?
So I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to tell you what I learned, right? Just through my studies at Hindi. What I began to realize is that my talent as a creative doesn't necessarily mean creative in the arts, but that when you are a creative, you are a creative problem solver, and you're able to use creative means to create something. Do you know what I mean? So I've come to find that although I'm in corporate now, that I'm still using the same side of my brain to be creative. Like for instance, you know, like you can be a news anchor. You know what I mean? Like you can be you can be on radio and stuff. And soon when you move into corporate, you actually find that, you know what, actually, I'm good with communications. That actually the core talent that I have is not a news presenter, but actually I'm a communicator. Do you know what I mean? So I would tell guys out there to go find exactly what is their root talent. In what you do, that is your doing. But there's a root gifting that you have, and take that and try and take it to another industry, and you'll be amazed. I mean, like at how rare that talent, you know, like that talent really, really is. So when you see me, you need to know that I'm a creative. You bring me any problem from any sector, and I'll probably find a creative way around it for you.
That's a fantastic way to look at it. I have a son who has a master's degree in drama, and he's a financial advisor. Because he can communicate. That's what he does.
Scenarios.
So,
you see.
So tell me about Jennifer. How did you meet? Did you immediately know she was the one?
Wow, you know, I met Jennifer. I was traveling actually around the time that I was doing the 46664. I met her in the UK, and I mean, obviously at that time I had a girlfriend, so I wasn't looking at her, you know, sort of in that way. But over time, we really started to develop a friendship, and she became a person that, you know, what was so great about her was the fact that, you know, Jen was born in Germany to a Polish mother and a Ghanaian father. So as much as she was in South Africa for a bit of time before she went to the UK, after having lived all over the world, she never really quite knew me. So when I used to go to the UK and I used to speak to her and we spend time together, I felt like it was one of the first times that someone just saw me for who I am.
Yeah.
So if I was a nonsense, rubbish person, she used to say that is what I was, you know, but don't try to be nice, because obviously
no, she wasn't impressed with the public persona. She met you just as you were.
Yeah, so I had to be myself. You know, like she actually helped me to really find who I was, you know, like who I truly am. And I believe that, you know, a success, the number one success is knowing who you are. You know, that's always the place to take off. And so I think she really, you know, sort of speaking to her, spending time with her, got me to that point of realizing who I actually really am, what parts I need to improve. It still kind of happens today, but I don't allow her to do that as much now, you know? And so that's what I got attracted to the fact that like it really felt like an angel just fell, you know, from the sky. And we then started going out for about a year and a half. And I asked if she could move to South Africa. But by then I knew that, you know, within a few months, if it's all good, we'll get engaged and hopefully, you know, hopefully get married. So that's the story.
And what makes it work? What is the connection? The realness.
Yeah, I think it's the realness, but also the communication as well, you know. But also, Jennifer is amazingly talented in so many facets, you know. She even surprises herself sometimes. She's got so much knowledge about everything. It was really the kind of person that I needed at the time when I didn't know much, you know. She would proofread and teach me. I mean, like now these days, I do the proofing, not for her, but like, you know, for companies that I work in, you know, like I do a lot of the writing and I know a lot about business, but she really was that anchor for me, for the person who just really kind of introduced me to the real world. Do you know what I mean? And she doesn't just do that for me, but she does it for many, you know, like for many other people. So I think,
but it also sounds
level,
sounds as if there's a bedrock of such respect for each other, for who the other person is. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I would have known back then that she would be like a great mom. We have friends calling her all the time asking for advice, because Jennifer just somehow just knows a lot about everything. But I mean, more than that, you know, she's just so loving, and I just can't see myself without, you know, like without her at all. Just such a great gift to me and the kids.
Yes, you have two daughters and I think a third baby on the way, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you remember the moment when you first held your baby?
I mean, you know, the first one, it's sort of like, I mean, it's so overwhelming. It's absolutely overwhelming that I think for most guys will remember that moment, but won't remember everything else much around it, because it was you know, it was water breaking. It was, you know, the fact that you're rushing to the hospital. It's a bit like dazed. Actually, I think I nearly got kicked out of the room because I think I was messing up more than actually helping. But I'll tell you this, you know, like when the second one was born, I said to myself, I said, Lord, please, I want the same excitement as I did the first one, you know, and that same overwhelming feeling. Because obviously, you know, it's the second one. I'm like, but how can I love my second child as much as I did my first? And so I was there, I was pretending, because, you know, you got to look like you're really excited. Although my mind was maybe like in one or two other places, and I'm talking about other stuff to Jen in the room, which was gonna have the baby. And so she had a C-section, you know, so they're busy then cutting her up, whatever, I think epidural, all this stuff. And then they go, oh, there she is, come on. And then they pull, and literally like this child comes, I'm like in a total different state of mind. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, I'm about to see this child. And once I laid my eyes on her, it's like without knowing, it took me straight back to that, to the time when I had Kinsey. And I literally just overwhelmed with tears. I was like, what? It's exactly the same feeling. So yeah, definitely. I think that second one was more memorable because it totally surprised me how I felt.
Yeah. Loyiso, if I may, it's very personal, but you have both spoken about it. Jen had a miscarriage about a year ago.
Yes,
and you decided, you also as a man, decided to talk about that. Why? And how did you experience it?
Yeah, you know, the thing is, we had been wanting a third child. And so Jen, obviously when Jen told me that she was gonna, you know, that she was pregnant, we both very much rejoiced, and we worked towards, you know, obviously started doing all the preparations. And it wasn't probably quite close to, it was later in the first trimester. We went back to the doctor and we heard that, we'd lost the child. And obviously, I mean, like, that was pretty painful because looking both at our ages, I'm 42 this year, Jen is 44. And 2 years ago, she was what? She was 42 and I was 40. My calculations are still there. And so we kind of thought, okay, well, it wasn't meant to be. I must say she was very strong with it because I know a lot of women suffer. And I think you don't so much cry for yourself as more than you're actually really crying for the baby. Do you know what I mean? Because like as believers that children, that these are children in the belly. Do you know what I mean? It's not just the fetus, but it's an actual child. You lost the child. Do you know what I mean? You didn't lose a fetus, but you lost the child. But that child lost its life as well in the process. So kind of going through that, like that process, and I guess like kind of grieving a bit as well, privately. But we just trusted God that not that He did it, but that all things like will work for the good. Maybe there's something that God knew that we didn't know, and this child now that's about to be born is our true miracle baby. I mean, they've all been miracle babies. I'll tell you why, because it's as if like God confirmed it by that this child is going to be born exactly a year later to when the one that we lost was going to be born. Exactly a year later. Do you know what I mean? So double for your trouble, we say, But I guess, I mean, like what's always important is that it's always good to grieve, but don't ever let the grief pull you down with it, because there's always something else on the other side. It always works out for the good.
Talk to me about the role of a father in the lives of daughters, of girls. How do you see that?
I mean, I think anyone who can have both parents, it's an absolute gift. Do you know what I mean? And maybe I'm talking more about myself. We know now that we're obviously living in we're living in a different world, and some people have played a really, really big role. We believe that, it's always, a village is always better than one person. Sometimes it may not necessarily be another parent, but always having a village, a bunch of people that really kind of raise you, is always better than one. There's actually a Cape Town song, two is better than one, it really says. And I guess, for me, being a father means that I have an opportunity to play a role in my children that I never had as a child. My father passed away at a very young age. I've had people coming in and becoming father figures. But at the same time, I had a heavenly father who taught me what love is. So when I think love, I always think God. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like when I think father, I always think God, because it's my only reference to a father. So it's quite a tall order to follow. I'm going to be like God to these children, but for me, I mean, like, it's been the greatest joy. Just spending time with them, just kind of downloading to them what it is that I've sort of learned over the years. But more than anything, I really believe that love has got to be at the center of it all. Love has got to be the driver, even behind discipline, even behind doing the right things. And that's all it is. I'm just another person to spread love to them.
And let's finish with some more practical stuff. Where are you living? What makes you choose the place where you want to be? Do you look for space? Do you look for light? Do you look for specific things that the girls may enjoy? How do you choose the space where you want to be?
Well, at the moment, it's probably about two things. Number one, it has to have a playroom. With three girls, well, two girls, another one on the way. That's pretty important. But I think for me, like a lighthouse. So if you go to our, not lighthouses in the one by the sea, but a house that has a fresh feel about it. So so not too many things in the house. I mean, like we always go for the lighter colors. So like your white and your beige, sort of feel. Very much like yours there, just behind you. There, Ruda. and light, I mean, like lights as well, you know, like sort of very important. And I guess that's because, you know, I grew up a lot with my grandmother, and she had too much stuff, you know. Also my mother-in-law as well, you know, Jane would say that, yeah, there was just so much stuff in the house. And so I think for me, not a lot of stuff, just very light, and space as well is always good.
And what's your favorite way of spending time with your family? What does quality time look like?
Okay, this may not sound good as a parent, you know, but on the couch is usually really cool. On the couch, around the piano, we sometimes, you know, we sit around the piano.
Do they also sing?
Yes,
Your
they
kids?
do. Yeah, if anyone goes to my Instagram, you'll actually see us singing as a family on any of our Instagrams, actually, and also traveling. I mean, like we love traveling, so we wish we could travel more. Actually, you know, Jen and I love the islands. If you go on there as well, you see you know, that's always like our thing. If we're on holiday, that's probably where we're gonna be.
Yeah.
But yeah, so traveling and just being together away somewhere.
Loyiso, thank you so much. And I do hope that we get out the other side of this horrible pandemic so that we can all start traveling again. And
Yes.
you can go back to your performance and all that. But
Absolutely.
thank you so much for spending time with us today, and all of the very, very best.
Thank you very much, Rita, just for your time. Yeah, I'm gonna get on a flight now because I'm flying out. Yeah, so I'll see you guys.
Well,
Okay.
back to the family, so that's
yes,
great.
back to the family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before the curfew hits. So cheers, guys. Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching, for listening. Until another time, goodbye.